it's my space, my time. Like I said, it's nothing pretty yet, but once I make my masterpiece, I'll sell it for big bucks.
Nice. I love that. I did a shop class in high school and I was awful at it and didn't enjoy it. I think I got like 17 splinters, but I respect the art of it because I couldn't do it. Another day, another episode of the I'm a Car Chick podcast. You already know it's me, your host, Shasta Haddock, and today's guest is going to be one that we have 30 minutes, and so I'm going to have to bust through these questions that I have for her because she's got 28 years in the automotive industry. So without further ado, because we got to get rolling, I want to introduce you to Jami Alexander, who is the regional manager for Meineke. Hello.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being on. We got to talking quite a bit before the show, and I think that's what honestly ate up most of our time is we just vibed really well. But I want you to tell our guests a little bit about you. You've got 28 years of experience. How did you find your way in automotive?
Well, actually, I was a single mom, and I was very young. I had my children very young. And I had an unfortunate incident where all of a sudden, literally overnight, I, had to provide for them. And I was managing a McDonald's at the time. I managed them all through high school. And I loved it, but the hours were just really all over the place, not conducive for, having young children. So I was terrified. I marched into a Napa Auto Parts and said, "You don't know it yet, but I'm your next best delivery driver."
I love that.
And that's where my journey started. And it's been nothing. I was only a driver for a short amount of time. I moved up to the counter, moved up quickly to the assistant manager, and then into store management, and actually opened up the very first Perfect Additions by Napa. That was where we sold the performance parts and actually installed them. It was a pilot program that took off in Utah, and we tried it out in the West Coast, and it just didn't take off. But
that's awesome. That's a cool position to have, and especially to just walk into a Napa. And as a young single mom, I imagine that had to be a little bit intimidating, was it?
It was extremely intimidating. But I knew that I couldn't work the hours anymore. And, providing for my children was super important to me. And I'm really glad that I did it because I think the most valuable lesson out of it is at a very young age, I was able to be brave enough to step out of my comfort zone and really switch gears. And I think that's something that I've kind of carried with me and throughout my years. So, I've learned to be comfortable and uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And confidence.
Yeah, it very much sounds like it. I mean, fast forwarding 28 years, you've built an impressive career in fixed ops specifically. So one of the things that I wanted to ask you is, what's one myth about the automotive industry that you think needs to be busted once and for all?
I think, my passion for over the last several years has been the technician side of things. I think that there's a myth that, and it's funny because you hear it a lot. You don't necessarily hear it about the people at the counter, but you hear the technicians just want my money. They just want my money. And I think that's the farthest from the truth. Over the last 2 years, I personally interviewed several technicians from all over the nation because I'm trying to truly understand why we're losing them at such a high rate, why they're not satisfied. And I think that customers think, and I still think a lot of, us leaders or bosses or, in this industry have that mentality that technicians should be seen, not heard. And when you really take the time to get to know your technicians and understand what they're working for, they are probably more customer focused than probably 80% of the people that we have either, serving, checking them in the lanes or, being service advisors to them. They really have a passion for what they do and they want the customers to be happy. I think they understood retention with customers probably way before we did.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't understand how much work they have to go through to get certified. Like, it's not just some overnight mechanic school you can go to and be, an A-Tech or, a Master Tech. There's so many hours of training, testing, going off and and being in classes at places. Like, it is so much work that, not pretty much anybody else in the dealership has to do.
Well, exactly, and it's always evolving. I mean, they don't just go to college and then come in and work and don't have to touch up. I mean, to keep the certifications valid, or especially those that work for dealerships, the manufacturers have requirements, for keeping things
Mhm.
up. It's an ever ongoing cycle.
Yeah, you've been really strategic with the teams that you've led, and I'm curious, what's the most unconventional strategy that you have used that has yielded really surprising results?
So, actually, this has been the last probably 7 years of my career that I've did this. Is I am finding that when you take front end counter people, advisors, managers, I'm having the best luck with those that have never worked in automotive in their life.
Hmm.
I'm finding really good luck and success from people from the hospitality business, the
Oh
customer
yeah.
service business. And, sometimes it hasn't worked, but most time it has. I've got two right now within my locations that, one, she came from TJ Maxx. She was a customer service manager for TJ Maxx, and she's
Interesting.
very, very new to our company. And her store manager has been out sick for the week, and this girl's only been here 2 weeks. She's actually exceeding in sales what the manager normally does. The process is amazing. The customers are happy. The reviews that are coming in are just, amazing.
This episode is brought to you by SCP Agency, your one-stop shop for organic social media. Check them out by clicking the link in the show notes or visit scpagency.com.
And then I have another kid, that a young kid that I hired at another location that came from, oh gosh, I'm calling a blank, but it's the hospitality field. Same thing. Walked into a new store. I mean, the customers are just extremely happy. The attitude, the whole vibe has changed within the location. So I think that, talking about myths, I think that's a myth too. You don't really have to, with today's new fancy technology and with the way that we have our processes, and it's really a people first process
Yeah,
always, and then profits follow business. It's not the car business. It's a people business before we can call it the car business.
definitely. And I couldn't agree more on the hospitality thing. I mean, even what we do in the BDC, I don't necessarily need or want people who either have call center experience or car dealership experience. I want that hospitality because I need to know that you're going to treat people right.
Right.
And that is the start of it, because that's how they made their money in hospitality was, how nice am I to these people? How good am I at my job? And how do I make them feel? And that those are the best people for the job, hands down.
Well, you're absolutely right. And I also think that we have, as an industry, need to do better, and we got to quit this knocking on the younger generation.
Hmm.
This younger generation is actually very, very smart. They want input to be out that directs the output. They want to know the whys. And, all we do is this industry has always been instant gratification. Why are the hows not happening? Why are the hows not happening? Come on, we got to get this, we got to get this right now. Well, when you step back and realize the value in slowing down to be able to speed up, and you listen to what these kids want out of it, it's not that they don't want to work less hard. They just want to work smarter, and they
Yep.
want some work life balance. And, as well as I do in this industry, that's something that's, it's looked down on. It's gotten better, but it's still looked down on. And I can't
Hmm.
say that they're wrong for that. I mean, I miss many milestones with my two young kids growing up, because I was always work, work, work. And that's one thing looking back now. I wish I would have slowed down a little bit and enjoyed life a little bit more too.
Well, and I think that it always goes back to a process. What can we do to alleviate tasks and simplify this so that we're not having to put in so many hours, so that we don't have to do so much man work? And really, I mean, if we think, it's funny, the guest that I spoke with yesterday, we talked a lot about AI, and AI is really helping with that. Like, it's, cutting down on how much brain power we're having to use so that we're not decision fatigued when we get home and can actually spend quality time with our families.
Yeah, but I agree with that, but you just hit on something, production, right? That's a word that everybody likes to throw around, and it's, how productive we are. But everybody likes to say it, but not many like to attack it and tackle it.
Mm-hmm.
And but you're absolutely correct with like the AI. When you have a streamlined process and you follow that process, and the help of the AI, you can become so much more productive in such a less amount of time.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if we were truthful with ourselves, what was it, about 10 years ago, they said if you got 5 good hours of work out of somebody in an 8 hour day, that was considered excellent. I personally think in some instances we've gone backwards a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially with the evolution of social media and how popular TikTok is,
Mm-hmm.
and the amount of times that I've seen people have to, get onto somebody else in a dealership for scrolling through TikTok or scrolling through Facebook. And you can be on those platforms and be doing something productive, but scroll ain't it,
Yeah.
for sure. So we talked quite a bit before the show, and you shared a lot on your thoughts on helping others find their path. But I want to go back to what your path looked like. What was a mentorship experience that had a significant impact on you?
So it was actually at Napa. It was
Yeah.
when I was doing the perfect editions, the shop that we rolled out. And um I'll just say it. I had to. The reason why I started in the automotive industry was my family literally moved me out in the middle of the night because I left domestic violence. And it
Oh,
was so bad that, it almost killed me. And, you know, as I was trying to navigate all of that, I, um, I got hurt with picking up a supervised visitation, picking up my child from supervised visitation, and I was out for a little bit. And I just felt defeated. I felt like I had nowhere to go. I felt like I had no way up, and I felt like I was trying to recover personally, but I still wanted to keep the hard exterior professionally, that I was going to be able to tackle it. And I just felt like I couldn't do it anymore. And his name was O'Shea Barner, and I talked to him to this day, and him and his wife were there that day. And he saw that I was struggling, and he took me outside, and we had one of those toolboxes that go in the back of the truck sitting there that we are going to put on display. And he goes, "I want you to sit down." And he handed me a coffee. I smoked back then. He handed me a pack of cigarettes. And he's like, "I want you to smoke as many cigarettes you need. I want you to drink as much coffee as you need." He says, "I want you to cry it out. I want you to get mad as hell. And I want you to remember who the hell you are."
what an amazing guy.
I mean, just absolutely amazing. And it was really hard for me because I've always been, that stubborn person. And it
Shoves
was
it
a
down.
really, huh?
The person that shoves it down deep, doesn't let anybody see you're
Yeah.
struggling. And
Yeah. And I took his advice, and it was a really vulnerable experience, because people saw me cry, but I cried like hell. I drank that coffee. I smoked that cigarettes. I got up and I said, "I'm going to conquer this."
yeah.
And, he just always told me, he would always have a saying. He's like, "I wish you could see yourself through my eyes like I see you."
Did you know that there's a monthly newsletter where you can keep in touch with everything the I'm a Car Chick podcast is up to? There is. Check out the show notes below, and you can also follow us on all social media and stay in tune with whatever we're up to. Mm.
And I fell in love with the car business, at that time, because it really empowered me to, that it was okay to be vulnerable and you could still be powerful.
Yeah. First off, I want to thank you for sharing that, because I know that there's going to be listeners out there who have either had a similar experience or can connect with that in some way. And I know it's not an easy story to tell, but I appreciate that you did. And I'm so glad you made it through that and had someone who, was willing to kick your ass when you needed it. And that sounded meant
True. It's
the
true.
mentor kicking your ass and making you, buck up and realize your worth.
Well, he called out my bullshit.
Yeah.
He basically, looking back now, 27 years later, he was telling me to get out of my head.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful for that. And so, that's why I feel like I owe this industry. I was a single mom. I had a high school education. I didn't go to college. I had 2 babies that, it wasn't an option. I was going to provide for them. They were going to have a better life than me, whether I had to work 1,900 jobs to make it happen.
Right.
And with hard work, grit, determination, this industry, the sky is the limit.
Yeah, exactly. There's no stopping you. I think it's safe to say that this experience and, your experience in general, being in the industry, entering the industry the way you did, made you an advocate for other women in the automotive industry. What initiatives have you found most effective in empowering women in the industry?
Well, I've got one coming up I can't talk about yet, but there is a women's initiative that I did join that I'm going to be
Oh,
hosting. But every year I pick three young females that I mentor throughout the year. We have one-on-one time, we have conversations. I make sure that I'm available and I think that, being a woman in this industry is not for the faint of heart. It
mm-mm.
takes our heart, right? And I'm known to have very real conversations. I didn't jump into this industry because I thought I was going to be better than anybody or that I was going to do it better. As I started learning the industry and understanding it was my passion, I made it my mission to be different. What could we bring differently? So, but you have to have tough skin.
Yeah.
There's been things that have been said to me throughout the years that would, make people cringe or maybe not, knowing the industry. We've gotten a lot better, throughout the years, but it's about being real. And if you can't be tough and you can't have this attitude of, oh, I'm going to be so much better, because that's not what it is about. We're stronger together as an industry. I have
Yeah.
had really great female mentors. I've had really bad ones. I've had really great male mentors, and I've had really bad ones. But I think as women, we know where to be firm. We know how to soften it and then throttle it back up. We are usually not afraid to tell somebody what they need to hear, not what they want to hear, but we're able to remain empathetic about it and be stronger through things.
I
So
agree.
I have a big passion for young females, joining this industry, and there's a couple that I've mentored that have a similar path as mine, and I'm grateful that I've been there. They all say we go through things because it's our way to be able to help somebody who doesn't know how to navigate something.
100%. And I think when we look at mentorship and leadership, that alone in the automotive industry is evolving rapidly. What do you say is one thing that leaders are probably doing nowadays that they need to unlearn in order to be more effective?
Well, this has gotten a lot better. But I think we still have a lot in this industry where if they would trade their ego for their patience, we would get a lot farther. And I think that starts at the top. Uh, and the reason being is because I've always believed that it does start from the top. So, and that goes back to what we were talking about, the hows and the whys. Um, when we have the patience to invest in our people, and we've got to quit looking at everything as a KPI. Those KPIs are important, but we need to embrace the authenticity of our employees, and we need to get to know what makes them click, because success to you looks very different than success to me. It's not
Right.
all about money. It's like, what is their whys? When you get to know the employees' whys, why they're doing it, what their goal is, then you're able to work together, not only from a better approach standpoint, but when you go off of personality and they're a definition of success in the whys, you'll be amazed how many people want to continue to help you grow. And because I am not a boss, I'm a leader. I tell my team daily, I work for you. If I work my butt off for you and make you my full-time job, then in return, you're going to want to take care of the customers. You're going to want
Mhm.
to do great things. And all that I ask is that you just work with me, not for
Yeah.
me, but with me.
It reminds me, you saying those things and finding their whys. I'm a very big advocate of having your team do the love language test, which is normally for couples, but very much applies. I mean, it's not how you receive love necessarily in a relationship, but how you receive love overall. And love can be translated into appreciation, respect. And so while some people, may just be in it for the money, and that would be probably more receiving gifts, some people may not care if you keep them at the same pay for 3 years, as long as you tell them when they've done a good job.
Yeah.
Or, they want the quality time, which is, maybe a mentorship. This episode is brought to you by Epic BDC, your number one outsourced BDC solution. Check out more about Epic BDC by clicking the link in the show notes or visiting epicbdc.com, where they know that they're seen and heard. Hopefully not physical touch. I mean, a high
No.
five here and there.
Yeah, no.
That one could get a little messy.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, and that's why when you know and you take the time to learn the personalities. I mean, I have some managers and technicians that they have to be more coddled. That's their personality. That's how they react. I have other ones where we can just have heated conversations, get it right out on the table, and then walk away, and there's no hard feelings. But once you learn those type of cues, it's amazing what can happen. But you, as a leader, you have to be able to be a chameleon. You've got to be able to adapt.
Yeah. You've spent a lot of years as a leader, even back when you were not in the automotive industry yet, but managing McDonald's franchises. What would you say is one career decision that felt like a huge risk at the time, but ended up paying out really good?
Believe it or not, it was actually Meineke. So I had ran after Napa, I actually ran an on-site fleet business so I'm actually well versed in, like 18-wheeler hydraulic boom repair, small generator, so anything from small trucks to, big booms, and went out of that. Then I worked for an independent shop and I took some time off. And when I was ready to come back, I called up one of my vendors that I knew and I'm like, okay, I'm ready to go back. Where you got me? He's like, you need to call my buddy at Meineke, and I started busting up laughing. And I'm like, Michael, after all these years you know me, you think I want to sell mufflers? I was like, you've lost your mind. And so I got in touch with the owner, and I really, really had a pit in my stomach. I was just like, I thought that I didn't know that I trusted, what they were telling me, what the shop did or whatever. And it took me about 6 months to really become comfortable in it and then realizing what we had done. And honestly, though, it is the best decision I ever made because I took from, managing smaller groups and not really getting back in the back end of things over this last 5 or 7 years. I'm losing track of time now. I've learned the back end of things. So I've been able to see things through the owner's eyes, and I've been able to see the why those were so important. And it's been helping me to incorporate the messaging into the team, to make sure that not only am I, that front facing, but I'm also, helping with the back end side of things as well.
And that's super helpful. And I imagine with a team the size of the one you have, because you're overseeing, is it 11 stores?
Yeah, so I have 10 stores between North and South Carolina, and then I'm co-helping with a new acquisition that we just purchased in Massachusetts.
That's got to be difficult, having one that's that far away. Do you get to travel there often to meet with that team?
I don't get to. I've not been on site yet, but we do keep in. So I do a daily messaging platform. So I have everybody that, we feel like we're, a team of one. But I stay in constant contact with Zoom meetings. And then I also, just having 10 stores in general, it's hard to be, present in every shop. But I make sure that we keep in contact there, through the Zoom meetings. And then also I do a weekly phone training with every manager. So either in person or via Zoom. So we have that, because obviously call conversion and call success has, been a huge, industry topic. So I have a specialized training that we do, and we do it together. So it's, it's not just me training it. It's one that's designed for engagement.
I like that. But with having a team that big, I mean, I can't imagine you probably have at least 50 people underneath you. And I know that you like to focus on the positives and, uplifting everybody, but there's going to be times where you have to have hard conversations with people. What's the best way to deliver bad news while still keeping people motivated?
Well, I think that starts before it's time for the bad news. That's fostering a culture of accountability. And when I say accountability, that's a two-way street. I can't expect to hold a team member accountable if I'm not expecting them to hold me just as accountable.
Right.
And, and I really believe in the servant leadership model. And, some people will argue because they'll say, accountability isn't part of the servant leadership model. I completely disagree with that. It absolutely is. And so I think it starts at the top. I mean, when you, as a leader, when you stay consistent with setting the expectations, expectations, pushing the expectations, being, consistent in enforcing the expectations across the board, not because they're a high performer or not because they're your favorite, but because this is what we push, and saving that reserve energy to fight that fight every time is important, because as leaders, they don't listen as much as what we say. Their listening is more in watching as we do.
Mm-hmm. It's
And
the parenting aspect of do what I say, not what I do.
yeah, and so, I some people call me stubborn, some people call me brave, but with multiple stores, I don't have time to shade things. We just have good conversations. I don't like to, it's like the but sandwich in parenting. You're doing this great, but when there's an issue, we got to just be comfortable to address it, identify it. And I started off by always asking, hey, I'm noticing a slip here. Is there something going on that I can help you with? Is there something that, because sometimes course correction is just as simple as, hey, you know what? I'm going through a really bad time right now. I'm trying to keep it together. And then when you understand those kind of things, you can tailor the approach, and you can bend the expectations as far as time frame, or
Mm-hmm.
lend help and support, because a lot of times people won't ask you for help unless you ask them. So, I mean, I'm always there. How can I help? What can I do? Where
And
am I missing?
that's something that I feel like, and I hate to ever make the gender divide, but I feel like that's where women leaders majority of the time thrive, because you've made it this far. And I have to say thank you so much for listening. Please be sure to rate the show, whether you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, subscribe on YouTube, and of course on all social media channels. Light it up. As mothers, we just have a little bit more empathetic trait in our DNA than most men do. And it's not saying all men, because I've met some men that are way more empathetic than some women I know. But
Right.
it's one of those traits that we're so good at, being able to point out and pay attention to, like when somebody's mood is just a little bit off, or, maybe they start coming in a little bit late, and, someone's mind would go to, oh, well, they're partying all night or whatever, and they're oversleeping, when in all reality, maybe they lost their childcare or went through a bad breakup, something like that, where it's actually a life experience and they're trying their best to handle it so that it doesn't affect you. But we got to pay attention to those things, those little 1 degree changes.
You're absolutely right. And I think as women, we have a natural ability to know when to let them fall. We won't let them fall completely, but I think that we do a better job being able to let them, because I mean, if you're going to be successful in this business, everybody's got to have some skin in the game, right? There are going to be times that as a leader, you have to step back so people can be uncomfortable in situations that they're causing, because everything in life is cause and effect, right? And
Mm-hmm.
if we just go in there and fix them and enable them and never allow them to be uncomfortable, then they're not growing. And we have a duty to grow more leaders, not blind followers. If I want my career to continue to advance, then I need to do my job of making sure I'm investing everything I can to grow people to lead and to take my place.
And that's a perfect transition into the next thing I wanted to ask you, which is, reflecting on your journey. What is the biggest lesson that you've learned that you want to pass on to the next generation of leaders?
The biggest lesson that I've learned is understanding the difference between confidence and arrogance.
That's a
You
good
know,
one.
being able to be confident in what you know, but you got to be able to be more confident in what you don't know. And being able to put the ego aside to ask questions and not to lie. If a team member comes to me and says, Jami, I need to know how to do this. If I don't know how to do it, I'm going to be 100% upfront. I don't know, but I know where I can go to find out.
Exactly.
And, I think I think confidence and arrogance is a very, very fine line, and it can easily, and I've done it too. I mean, I've not been perfect my 28 years. I've had my times of my hair on fire, and early on in my career, hey, I'm the boss. Well, once I realized that it wasn't about being a boss, it was being there to help, and realizing that I was only going to be as successful as who I successfully had around me. My whole vision changed. And some people have called me soft over the years. Well, I would like to push back, because I'm known for pushing really strong numbers, really
Mm-hmm.
strong KPIs. And I have teams that buy in and that they believe. And you know why? Because I believe in them. And I believe in them enough to where they can come to me and they can be candid with me. If I'm doing something that's counterproductive, let me know. It's not going to hurt my feelings.
Yep. I fully believe, and it's funny, I discussed it on the episode that I had yesterday too, but our leadership team believes heavily in honest, open, transparent communication. And there's a book by Patrick Lencioni called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And the bottom dysfunction is always an absence of trust.
Yeah.
And that means, and it's not like, I don't trust that you're not going to screw me over. It's, I don't trust that you have my back, or I don't trust that you have my best interests at heart, or that you'll be candid with me. And so breaking through that absence of trust always comes up to the next dysfunction, which is fear of healthy conflict. And so we have to be able to have that healthy conflict and call each other on our crap when one of us can see it and the other one can't.
Well, absolutely. And I mean, just in the talk in the industry, between we can't have closed doors between the shops and the counters. We have to encourage and foster that within each individual center, right? Every center is their own ecosystem, whether it, be different customer base, management, capabilities, technician capabilities. But when we can foster that open door between the two, it becomes like a checks and balances system.
Mm-hmm.
And a good manager is going to understand a technician's weak point, and a good technician is going to understand their manager's weak points. And they're going to realize, hey, we're going to keep each other out of trouble when they can recognize that. And it's done in a way where nobody's pointing fingers or putting somebody down. I mean, we all have things going. I'm 40, I don't even know how old I am. I'm 46 years old and I'm still growing up. I don't want to ever grow up until the day I die, because then what's the point? If I'm not always learning, then I'm not growing.
Yeah. If you're not growing, you're shrinking.
Yeah.
So I know that you're getting ready to have to run. I have one last question that's a little bit of a fun one. What is something about you, whether professional or personal, that people are always surprised to learn, or that many people may not know about you?
I love to do woodworking.
Interesting. Like benches, shelves.
Yeah, benches, tables.
Nice.
I would not showcase any of my work because it's really not worthy, but I love to do it.
That's cool.
Yeah, it just kind of, it's my space, my time. Like I said, it's nothing pretty yet, but once I make my masterpiece, I'll sell it for big bucks.
Nice. I love that. I did a shop class in high school and I was awful at it and didn't enjoy it. I think I got like 17 splinters, but I respect the art of it because I couldn't do it. And I'm super OCD, and no, I kept trying to perfect it, and then I ended up ruining it. So
yeah, I never perfected it. But you know what? If you're not trying, you never know.
Exactly.
You never know.
I know that there's going to be a part 2 to this interview because we had to rush this one a little bit, and there was definitely some topics there that I didn't get into. But in the meantime, what is the best way for people to connect with you if they want to learn from you or have questions for you?
LinkedIn is probably the best one to get. So just Jami Alexander on LinkedIn. Jami.
Jami. And I'll, of course, link it down in the show notes for you guys so that you can connect with her. Thank you so much, Jami, for coming on the show today. Like I said, I know there's going to be a part 2 to this because there was so much we did not get to dive into. I know you've got a big meeting to get into, so I'll let you run. Audience, be sure to connect with Jami and follow her on LinkedIn. She posts some really good content, and hopefully I can get her back on the show soon so that we can continue this conversation. But in the meantime, remember to light it up. Thank you so much, Jami.
Thank you for having me. Have a great day.
You too.
Thanks.